Good morning. Welcome to our session, Moving to the Education Cloud. My name is Carrie Trenum. I'm from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Digital Enablement. And in my role, I oversee our teams that manage our Salesforce orgs, marketing cloud instances, our student information system, MuleSoft, mobile apps, and several other things. And I'd like to hand it over to
Good morning, everyone. Again, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Barb Roberts. I am the Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management. I've been at UNLV for almost 15 years. I work in the Division of Academic Affairs, and in my role, I oversee admissions, recruitment, an early outreach team, a transfer center, undergraduate and graduate populations, financial aid, and the registrar's office. I think I about got everything right.
Yeah, I think so. And I forgot to say, I've been at UNLV for 19 years, so we've been around for a while, but we have a lot of history and a lot of stories to tell. Just want to say thank you to everyone for coming to our session today. You have a lot of things that you can choose from, and we're so honored that you've chosen to spend time with us today. And so to jump into our presentation, we want to talk to you a little bit about UNLV, but then also our current Salesforce journey that's brought us to where we are today.
And before we get started and talk about who we are, we'd like to just get a sense of who's in the audience. So first off, how many of you have already migrated and are fully into Education Cloud? Nobody, okay. How many of you?
There's one.
Got it.
Got one over there.
Okay. And how many of you are in the middle of a migration or implementation right now? All right. And is anyone just here to be like, should we do it? Should we not do it? We're planning on it. We're trying to make that decision.
Okay, that's
all right. That's kind of what we thought would be the case. So I'm going to kick it off just talking about a little bit about who UNLV is, who our students are. I'm not going to get fully in depth because you've already seen a lot of red on the stage in this Ed Summit. So we are the #2 most diverse institution in the nation. We have been in the top 5 since that ranking came about in the 2010s. We are extremely proud of that fact and that we are a minority-serving institution, an ANAPZ, and that diversity is who we are. And with that, we are also extremely proud that we continue to be incredibly diverse while also being an R1. We have students from all 50 states, all US territories, and 84 countries to add to the rest of our diversity. And as Kate and others have said throughout the summit, we have a very, very high percentage of first-generation and Pell-eligible students.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about where we began. And so the thing that we always like to start off and say is in 2013, we started with only 3 enterprise licenses on campus. We actually have 2 of those license holders here today. I'm one of them, and our CIO, who's in the audience, had one of the others. And so, we started back in 2013, and at that time, we had decided that we had a current admissions CRM solution and an application, and we decided that we wanted to move to something else. And we made the decision at that time that we wanted to move to Salesforce. And so that was, like you heard yesterday in the keynote, that was a time when before education was a cool thing for Salesforce. And so we met with some partners at that time. It was very new to everybody in the Salesforce space. And so we elected to do that implementation ourselves. That was before HIDA, then EDA. We actually started out with the NPSP, for those of you that are familiar with that. And we built it all ourselves. We went live in 2014 with our undergraduate admissions application and as well as the supporting recruiting pieces as well. In 2015, and while our other implementation was going on, the graduate college also had gotten into the Salesforce vibe of things, and they elected to go with a managed package, a product. Some of you may be familiar with it, Enrollment RX. And in 2015, they went live with Enrollment RX in a separate org. Then we moved along, we got to 2016. We decided to completely overhaul what we were doing with admissions and recruiting and really to try and leverage some of the more of the delivered functionality in the platform. We started using the lead object and lead scoring and a variety of different things. 2017, we moved everybody to Lightning, and we, took the option where we turned it off for everybody and didn't give them a choice. And so, and then in
We
28,
went nuclear. That's what she
What's
liked.
that?
We went nuclear.
yeah. And then in 2018, we started doing our Service Cloud deployments. And who all's in enrollment management in the room? There's a few of you, so you can talk with Barb. She's an expert about kind of how that went in that space. And then in 2019, serendipitously, before the COVID pandemic, we actually fully released our self-service, at the time, self-service help centers, we called it, which was an Experience Cloud site where we had a variety of self-service options for students, including the ability to submit cases, some forms, and a few other things. In 2020, we onboarded Online Education, and they're using some of our project management tools that we have in our org. And then 2021, we're expanding the units that we're bringing in. I think the thing that I wanted to say is our effort has been very grassroots, like, hey, can you buy 4 licenses? Hey, do you want to buy 5? And so on and so forth. And so that's kind of why we have this story where we've gradually expanded. In 2022, we did finally install the EDA, the Education Data Architecture package, and that is because it was a prerequisite for Student Success Hub, which we implemented in 2022 and 2023 because we moved in all of our student success, so undergraduate academic advising, and so that landed with the Rebel Success Hub. So now that brings us to today of making the move to Education Cloud. And so how did we make this decision? And that's what a lot of what we want to talk with you about today. And it was actually last year at the Education Summit that we were there as a team and we're looking at all of the innovation and the pace at which Salesforce was releasing things with regard to the Education Cloud. And, for a long time, especially since we had started so early in Salesforce, we always felt like, we felt like we were in a pretty good place. We were ahead of a lot of things. We were innovative. And then seeing all of that in real time there, it was this kind of light bulb of like, oh my goodness, like if we don't do this now, we're going to be behind. And then it was exciting to see all of the things that Salesforce was releasing and continuing to add. And so that was a lot of what led to our decision of, yes, we're going to go ahead and make this move.
So with that, let's just talk a little bit more about the early decisions that we made. And so we really looked at kind of the cost versus the benefits of moving to Education Cloud. I had just not long before that had moved the grad recruitment and admissions pieces to my unit. And so at that time, they were then working admissions and recruitment things in a different org, right? As Carrie mentioned before, with a managed package. And so we started looking at how does this all fit? How can I get everyone and expand our ability to recruit for graduate and professional programs and not increase staff, and how does all of that work? And so when we looked at what are the costs if we go to Education Cloud, when we made that decision, it was like, well, it's going to cost staff time, and it's going to cost focus, and it's going to take away from other priorities if we start implementing this. And how are we going to do this? We had other things that we were trying to do. We're always improving and always adding on to everything that we're doing. There's, of course, the actual cost of things. What do we have to do to pay upfront to get into Education Cloud? What's the long-term cost? And while we are implementing, and it's going to take us longer, we have to continue to have licenses in both orgs, which is also an additional cost we have to think about. So the benefits were we're going to get rid of those duplicative costs. We're not going to have to be in 2 orgs anymore if we go ahead and make the move and get everybody into Education Cloud. We also wanted very much to have a full picture of all of our students in one place. We currently had that for undergraduate students, and we had some information about our graduate student population in our other org, but everything from prospect to enrollment and a lot of things with graduate retention, progression, and completion were all in a completely different place. And so people couldn't see the whole picture of our graduate student population by logging into one thing. So that was a benefit for us of let's get it all together so that everybody can see and we can have one cohesive picture of who our students are, not just our undergraduate students, but our graduate population as well.
Yeah, and the thing I would add on to that too is just even from an IT perspective, this idea of not having to support multiple orgs in the same way, but really being able to align our team efforts and put forward innovation and enhancements in one place that benefits, the full population versus one or the other, that was something that was really appealing to us as well. Another consideration for us is do you use an implementation partner or not? Now, as I mentioned before, it was up until, I think, 2022 that was the first time that we had used a partner to help us with some stuff. Like, we had been kind of big believers in, let's try it out ourselves, and if we get to a place where we need help, then we'll ask for it. The story I always like to tell here is, when you're doing things yourselves, one of the things that happens, you come up with this great solution, and you're trying to get it to work, and then you're running into a roadblock, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna consult the vast resources on the internet and the community, and then you can let me know how many of this times it's happened to you is when you Google it, and the first thing that pops up is a Salesforce exchange idea for whatever problem you're having. Has anyone else had this experience? We like to call those learning opportunities. We've had a few of them over time. But when we really tried to think about partner team or internal team, there's pros and cons of both. And we, very much have a philosophy that we want our team hands-on and in there and doing the work. But when we think about a partner team, faster implementation is something, knowing that, like, if you have a certain timeline that you need to meet it, you're gonna have an initial investment up front with this, and so do you have the funding for that? And you'll notice that we've said a couple of times in various places, whether it's from a cost and resource standpoint of setting other priorities aside and where are you making those decisions. And so, like, if you choose to use a partner team, well, maybe there's something else I was gonna pay for, and I'm gonna choose to spend those dollars on getting that help and assistance. If you're thinking about your internal team, like, yes, you build a great amount of internal knowledge and institutional knowledge and those things, but it may be a slower launch, right? Because you've got to spread it out longer. Your staff still have their jobs, and they've got to maintain and keep the ship afloat, so to speak. You may extend your licensing costs of if you're paying for licenses in multiple places. And again, still, you're setting other priorities aside, because if we're pulling our internal team away from things that they're working on. And then the other piece, too, for us with Education Cloud, we have deep Salesforce knowledge, but it's not in the Education Cloud with the data model in that space. And so we really felt like that in our case, that it was important for us to have that kind of external expertise and some people that had exposure to all of the various data cloud models and all of those things.
And so as we really got into the implementation, we wanted to make sure that we had some very clear goals and success metrics in what was going to make this implementation successful. And so for us, it was, again, can we get rid of things that were duplicative? Are we able to really streamline what we're doing? Can we make our students have a really great experience from the point of early outreach, like I mentioned before, all the way through an undergraduate career into a graduate career? Can this be very cohesive for them? Can we relieve pressure from our staff because we can make things better with our implementation in terms of their daily functions? So those were really important goals for us, and it really took us having a lot of stakeholder engagement. And I'm a stakeholder, right? And I am so proud to work alongside our team from IT. But it's not just me, it's others as well. So it went deep into my own units with the registrar, with financial aid, with graduate recruitment and admissions, and folks in the graduate college in terms of what do they need? What are their big asks? What are the things that are going to make this better for them in terms of GA processing, graduate assistantship processing, in terms of tracking retention and progression for graduate students? And so there was a lot of conversations back and forth and really trying to measure what are the things and talk to us about, is this going to work for you? And also the conversation, which is we've heard a couple times, of like, we don't want to just copy what we have already. We should be making it better. Let's not just do exactly what we're doing now and then put it into a different space. But it's like, scrap that, forget that. We know what our functionality is, fine. What do we want it to be? Where do we want to see improvements made? What's the big idea? And then we shoot for that, and if we're not able to do that, maybe it's an iterative process to get there, but we can start somewhere else.
And the thing I would add on to that is that, one of the key parts of our story is that we've really had good executive support for doing these things and having those champions that are, my boss, our CIO, Barb's boss, the Senior Vice Provost for Academic Affairs. And so because it's having those people to be able to advocate and go and build relationships with leadership in other areas or with the provost and president and other executives on campus, like that's really a key part. And how, you've seen our story. It started in 2013 and organizational structures were different and people were in different roles. And so we've really seen an acceleration of what we've been able to do by having our executives be able to be in decision-making places, but then also to be a champion and to push that stuff forward as we, even looked to this Education Cloud project. The other one that we have here on our slide is talking about data governance and then security and compliance and all of those pieces. And so, it's many times, like compliance is a big one. And the example I'll use is Barb has financial aid. And so then at what point, depending on which financial aid business processes we might be putting into Salesforce, well, when does Salesforce become an in-scope system for our single audit? And then knowing that there's different requirements around that, when you do have to address those things via an audit. Obviously, security is a big piece of what data we're sharing with who and where. Do we need to make changes in that space? And then data governance as well, of just knowing that we want to operationalize this data, be able to make it accessible. How can it be consistent across the institution, across the business processes? But then especially because it's our new enterprise org that we're in the process of building, and so we need that to be able to bring many pieces of the institution in and not build, say a data model or things like that that are specific to one area or another that might be our current use case.
Yeah, and I would just add to, the security piece and thinking about, even within financial aid, we have certain groups that needed certain security for certain things that we were doing. And so we were very intentional about setting up who could have permission sets for things that needed to be done. And that went widespread when we went kind of across campus and brought in advising as well for all of our case management and notes and all of those things. And we had to make decisions about what could everybody else see. And can they see if they have a case in financial aid? Can they read what the student writes? Maybe, kind of depends what the topic is. Can they see an attachment that the student has? Probably not. And so it really came down to fine-tuning, and you need to understand what is it that you're comfortable with and who has an educational need to know what the things are that they can see.
So we'd like to move on and talk about a few making the move and talking about some migration strategies. The thing that I would say here is the topics we'll talk about in this space. Maybe you're moving from Salesforce to Salesforce. Perhaps you're moving from another system to Salesforce. And so I think the concepts and topics apply kind of equally in those spaces. Excuse me. And so the two kind of that I'd like to spend a minute talking about here is a phased approach or a big bang approach. And there's, much like with anything, there's pros and cons of all of the situations. And so the phased approach, and we're going to talk to you in a minute about our phased approach that we elected to go with. But things that come with this are going to be things like multiple moves. So we're moving pieces and modular items at a time. It may extend our timeline overall because we don't want to move everything all at once. And then there may be some impacts to staff as well of having to work in multiple places. And obviously with these migrations, we always want to reduce any sorts of situations where there's double entry or, extra work and that thing. But even just having to look and, I got to look here for this, and now I got to look here for this, and, being willing to weigh kind of the risks in that space, but then also the benefits of long-term, this is going to help get us there quicker overall. From a big bang perspective, it's that's where you're going to do it all, and you're going to do it all at once, right? And so sometimes timeline is going to dictate that. Maybe you have contracts ending, licensing that you don't want to extend, and it's like, we need to be done by X date, and we're going to move everything in XYZ system, and we're going to go and do that. Obviously, when you're making a move in this way, like that increases your risks. Like I'm now moving 10 pieces instead of just 2 pieces. And so then what if something goes wrong, or we have problems on the user adoption space, or any of those things? The other thing too with your Big Bang approach, and it's true in both places, is the impact to your project team. And that's both from your IT and your technical resources, your business users that are a critical part of any of these projects, of how much time are we able to pull people out and work on these things, but then, like we mentioned earlier, then how to make sure that they're still able to do their jobs and continue serving students while we're working to make things better for them. And so, like I said, we chose the phased approach because we have several things that we are moving, and we just felt like that was better for our needs, and plus allowed us to control the timing a little bit more in the way that we wanted to. The thing that I did fail to mention, even with your Big Bang approach, like you may also have multiple go lives, and so perhaps you're following the life cycle of a student. So you're going to start with one piece, say recruiting and admissions, and then you might move to doing your Service Cloud next, or whatever kind of those pieces are. So you still, in that approach, you may end up with multiple go lives as well. Also, when we talk about migration strategies, these are a few things that have been considerations for us. And so the first one is that solution structure. And so trying to balance where are we at with regard to customization versus the out-of-the-box solutions. And so one of the biggest priorities for us as we do anything, but particularly in these projects, is that we want to make sure it's scalable and that we're able to grow. And so one of the pieces and story I'd mentioned is, our org has quite a bit of customization in it because we built a lot of stuff from scratch when we started. And so, for example, the world that we're living in now is that we have 2 term objects. So we have our term object that we built, and we've got a bunch of dependencies on that. But then we also installed EDA, and now we have the term org, and there's dependencies the term object there, and there's dependencies on that. And so we've kind of got term information in 2 places as one example. But then, you can't always predict the future roadmap of products either. And so sometimes that's inevitable. When you build a custom solution for yourself, then they're going to deliver something for you later on. But we do, as we've approached our Education Cloud projects, we really are looking to try and leverage all of the things that Salesforce is delivering that's out of the box, because we expect that there's going to be future enhancements around those pieces as we go along. And so if we have the opportunity to use those out-of-the-box solutions, whether it's the individual application object or programs and benefits and some of those things, then that will reduce, then hopefully, we hope, overall our technical debt over time, so that we're not having to kind of maintain these extra things. The data transfer is a big one that I'd like to talk about. And so one of the biggest decisions and things that we have to approach is, how much data are we migrating? And I've got a few things listed there on the slide. But as we know in higher education, people always like to keep everything forever. And is that something that we really want to do? Like, do we need to keep as an example, do we need to keep all of the tasks that we've had for the past 10 years, or all of the individual email results, for example, or any of those things? And so that's where we've had a lot of conversations and making decisions around, yes, we're going to migrate these things, but no, convert data, I should say. Or, we're going to leave that behind because we don't feel like, that's contributing overall. And then obviously, storage is a concern and consideration, because storage isn't cheap, the data storage. But then also really trying, as we take this opportunity to cleanse our data, and you always want your data to be clean. We feel like ours is decent overall. But then we still found opportunities where it's like, well, yes, we can clean up how we're storing this data, or we have, you build those workarounds over time, and you're like, okay, well, this is our opportunity to now not do that workaround of like, well, I got to pick field A and field B, and then that equals field C. But then it's also that mapping of, like Barb said, of not exactly replicating what we're doing, but really figuring out, like, yes, this may be a more complicated conversion, but we're going to split, say, an object, and we're going to actually put it in 2 places, because that makes more sense from the new data model with the Education Cloud and so on and so forth. And then the last thing is really considering that integration framework moving forward. And so, obviously, Data Cloud is a big piece of all of this when you think about Education Cloud, when you think about agents and all of that. And so trying to figure out How can we set up our structure so that we can bring in the data from the student information system? What is going to be meaningful from our LMS? So we use Canvas and Structure at our campus. And then there's lots of other systems. And so a good example might be Handshake. So Career Services is using a point solution for theirs, and they're happy with it, but then we feel that that data would potentially be valuable in our CRM. And so how can we plan to make sure that we can have a home to put that data, whether it be Data Cloud or directly in the Salesforce org itself, so that we can continue to build that full picture of the student and their interactions. And one of the things that we're really excited about is if we're able to bring in some of this additional data, then what are those insights that we're gonna be able to know of, like, hey, this student is in trouble, and we wouldn't have known it otherwise, except we saw, well, they missed some assignments in Canvas, they didn't go to their tutoring check-in or miss their advising appointment, whatever it may be, and then so that we'd be able to flag those and then more proactively support them. Is anything you'd?
I think the only thing that I would add to that is kind of like Carrie mentioned about the predictive ability for us to recognize when we need to step in with a student. When we're going to use a little bit more of an intrusive model instead of just an observer model with our students who need us and maybe don't know they need us. We are also in the process of implementing a product for parent communication. And our big goal with that, not at the first phase of that, but the second phase of that, is that we are really going to look at our parent interactions and bring those back to also see how that overlays with the students' interaction things and student success, so that we can, again, use those things to help us predict students who may have gaps, who may need help, and how can that data help us make those decisions as well.
Yeah.
So measuring our success, what do you do after you implement? Or even while you're implementing every single piece, every step of what you're doing? KPIs, they're extremely important. And I'm enrollment management world, full disclosure, everything is a number, right? I know they're humans, but also we need to have goals and we need to have metrics, and things need to be measurable. And so KPIs are extremely important. And it seems like an odd thing to say as a KPI. How do you measure user adoption rates? But it is a huge KPI, and it's something that you have to support all along the way, and I'll get to that in a moment. But that's something that you need to be measuring. How many times do you see teams doing the things they need to be doing? And in my units, I tell them, we measure a lot of things weekly. We have a lot of dashboards and reports in Salesforce, and I tell them if it's not in Salesforce, it didn't happen. If you talk to a student, they were a walk-in, and you didn't put as an activity that it was a walk-in, that student was never in front of you. It was never in the office. It didn't happen. If you're emailing them out of your own personal email and you didn't put that into Salesforce, there's no email. So it is very much about you've got to do this for the whole picture of the student, but also so that I can see where your productivity is, where you maybe need help being coached, and to serve our students better. System performance comes right along with that. What are the things? Is the system performing how you want it to? Is it getting you where you need to get with your students and with your staff? Are you truly, enabling your staff to do other things, like we always say, taking that weight off of them, where you can use automation and you can use system performance to allow the humans to do the things that humans need to do. And that's incredibly important. And that leads directly into process efficiency. There are so many things. We are a Google campus, and I love it. I'm so happy to be a Google campus. But if I have to see another Google Sheet, tracking things of this is our list of things that we're going to ask the registrar's office to do. And I'm like, oh, can we not have any more Google Sheets? I can't take it anymore. How can we get this into Salesforce so that we have clean data? It's clean data instead of a shadow database of some kind of activity happening. So the iterative process of all of this, of setting the KPIs and reevaluating them, comes with a lot of feedback. And yes, it's feedback from people like us, but more importantly, it's feedback from the users. It's feedback from the boots on the ground. How is this working for them? Do you have a process for them to tell you how it's working for them? How is it working for students? And if you want to find that out, you just have to go to Reddit. That's where you go look for that, right? But we want that feedback. From there, we make improvements. These are changes that are bigger, right? We need to get rid of the Google Sheet, and we need to put it, we're going to have a form entry or something in Salesforce. We're going to have it built this way so we can move it from office to office without having to send someone a Slack message saying, hey, this is there, can you go do this thing? Instead, it just shows up as something that they need to take care of every single day. And then we look for, what are the enhancements? This is a little different than an improvement. You might think it's the same. Sometimes my staff, sometimes they think it's the same. IT tells us it's not. We say the enhancement is, this wasn't what you initially asked for, but now we see that you want something to just put a little bit of lipstick on it. Make it a little smoother, make it a little prettier, make it a little nicer. And so we can do that, but what's the give here? Or are you willing to wait for that enhancement because it's functioning as it is? And all of those things then lead to tech empowerment. Like I mentioned before, what can your staff do with technology? And I don't know about all of you, but you've heard that we're trying to grow enrollment, and no one's asking me, hi, do you need 20 more positions? I have them right here for you. That's not a thing. And so instead, how do I gain efficiency so that I still have enough staff to do the things that I need to do? And so our systems enable our values of serving our students, but also enable us to continue to grow without necessarily getting more positions. And then our metrics that we talked about really it's okay. Help us measure our success overall.
And so just what's our story of what's our path at UNLV and what are our next steps and things that we've got that we're working on. So as we've mentioned, the first part of our phased approach is our Enrollment RX org that we have that houses the graduate admissions and graduate college student services and getting those moved into Education Cloud. Our next step is going to be moving all of our IT service management into our new Education Cloud org. And so we're currently using another system for that today, but we're very excited to move those things into Salesforce. The next piece that will likely end up moving are pieces from our enterprise CRM of, maybe it's our Service Cloud deployment, maybe it's, we haven't fully formed that plan yet, but we have kind of that big other org, which includes the undergrad CRM piece, and then also all of our undergraduate student success offerings, which we call the Rebel Success Hub, but that's all of our, the student success with academic advising and all of those pieces. And so we're gonna be migrating all of those things ultimately into this one Education Cloud org. The other thing I feel like I should mention that's an important part of our story is that our advancement, philanthropy and advancement and alumni area is also currently engaged in a Education Cloud project as well. And so they're going to be implementing the philanthropy pieces of the Education Cloud. They are going to exist in a separate org, but we're really excited about the opportunities that we'll have to be able to use Data Cloud to get the data between the two orgs that we'll need while still allowing those things to exist separately. So lastly, the thing that we have to talk about is a few lessons that we've learned. And we'll be the first to admit that
we're still learning, for sure, every day. Yeah.
And then,
so, we already talked about the budget and leadership buy-in and how incredibly important those things are. And it's politics and patrons. Who are the people that you need to be able to talk to, have a conversation with, to get them on board so that they can help get someone else on board. That politics those are important in higher ed, whether we want to admit it or not. So we have to find our patrons and then help them lay the groundwork to be able to get the budget, really. That's it, right? Yeah.
And then obviously a big next one, and we spend a lot of time working on this, is really that project team time allocation and how are we juggling and prioritizing all of the things that we have going on, because it's, overall, the things doesn't stop, and there's new ideas that come every day. You all know this. It's like, oh, hey, we've got this special program. This needs to be done next week, like figuring out how to get that done both in the IT space as well as in the business areas.
And then lastly, the user adoption and training, which I mentioned already a little bit, but it's really about building champions. The first group that came on board was the undergraduate recruitment team in our enterprise org, and it was a lot of training. And I just kind of didn't give them the choice. I said, you're gonna do this. And we had hours of training every day. They had assignments that they had to do at night. And it was a lot of work and things that they had to do to be able to get the access. And though some people might feel like, well, gosh, they probably rebelled doing that, they actually didn't. They were excited to learn. And now if you tried to say we're not going to be doing these things in Salesforce anymore, they would revolt. And what happened is we created a team of champions who then were telling everybody about their work in Salesforce. And now we have all across campus people saying, well, we want to do the work in Salesforce too.
Yeah. And so a few key takeaways that we've got for you here today is, and the first one is maintaining open communication, and that's at all levels of the institution, whether it's in the IT department, between our stakeholders, with our business users, with our executives, like we mentioned, and then also overall the concept of change management. And that's one of those things that can easily, we've got change management at a different point, I forgot. So I'll skip that for now, but it's really trying to be transparent, and we try and do that is here's the things that we're working on, here's where we're at with our migration, here's where you're in line, and being able to tell folks
I think it's also if you're going to use an implementation partner, having really open communication with them and really telling them, we don't want it to be like this, and being very clear that this is what we want, this is what we don't want, how can you help us with this, and really having that dialogue and it not be prescribed. The tech empowerment piece we already mentioned, but it is a really big takeaway. What do you really want to do? You can't just be going into Salesforce just to be going into Salesforce. So how do you want to use the technology beyond just a data storage? Because it is way too fancy to just use it as data storage. So you need to understand what's the empowerment for your staff, for your students behind the technology.
And we're, in our education cloud implementations, one of the things, and we've used this a lot over time, is this concept of starting with a pilot program or somebody who's friendly to the process to say, we're going to try this business process here now, and we're going to do it this way, and maybe we try it with just one unit out of maybe 10 that need to do it, and so that then ultimately that one unit can help us bring the others along. But then it also gives us the opportunity to enhance and refine without, with folks that will be understanding of that and will work with us, and then things can be more perfect, if you will, for when we bring along those other folks.
And I think we've kind of covered, these other points, but we just wanted to bring them back up in a key takeaway space so that everyone understands really the importance of those topics. And so with that, I think we're a little short on time. Let's go to our future vision.
So we've got a lot of things that are going on, and really looking forward to talking to a lot of you about your plans and those things. But as you've heard in the keynote and elsewhere from UNLV, we're gonna have a big focus on Agentforce, and we're planning our agents right now and where we're going to deploy those and how we really think those will be beneficial. We also are going to be, in the next few months, implementing the Enterprise Grid Slack for all of campus, and so we're very excited about the opportunities with teaching and learning in addition to the cross-unit collaboration.
And I'm super excited. We have 2 units right now that our call centers are outsourced, our financial aid and cashiering and student accounts units, and we are going to be bringing those back in-house. We're going to have a communication center, both phones, chat, messaging, all of those things, and then eventually expanding to 24/7 service, not just with agents and chat, but also with live humans. And it's really, we've found such efficiencies already in Salesforce. It's enabled us to discontinue our third-party contracts for our call center and bring them back in-house.
Yep, and we're currently working through our plan for further campus-wide expansion. Like we mentioned, it's really trying to prioritize and be transparent about who's next in line and who are we bringing next and what are we able to accommodate with Go Live and those things. And then obviously the governance piece that we talked a little bit about. But we have a few final thoughts.
So first of all, I mentioned this a little bit, but the vision of things and the implementation are often not on the same timeline, and they really shouldn't be anyway. I'm constantly, probably a little bit to the chagrin of some folks, I'm constantly thinking way beyond like, what's next? I'm like, gosh, but we're doing this right now. Like, can you give us a break? And the answer is no. I'm always gonna think bigger and broader and beyond the implementation that's currently happening. And it's important to do that so that you know the direction that you want your implementation to go. We also mentioned the patrons. I like to say, find your friendlies. And yes, sometimes that's because of politics, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just with support. It's helping with user adoption. It's helping with training. It's helping across all areas, even if it's students that really just like to be in the system and understand the benefits that they are gaining from us having all of this technology deployed for them.
Yep. And then lastly, really trying to emphasize the benefits of these projects for all audiences. We truly believe and are passionate about that Education Cloud and what we're going to be doing there and bringing it all into one place is going to benefit our students greatly. It's going to help with that sense of belongingness and how we're able to serve them, and then also to hopefully help make our staff's lives easier. And as we grow, we're not going to get more positions, and so how can we enable them to serve students and other staff in a better way?
That's right.
And so I'm a member of the Higher Ed Advisory Council, so I just want to do a quick plug for this, is that we're a group that's here for everybody, and we've got our QR code there that's got links. We do office hours once a month. We participate in the Education Cloud Trailblazer group, and then there's going to be the Higher Ed Dreamin' Conference that's on December 10th. It's free and it's virtual, and we hope that everyone will be there. And lastly, we just want to say thank you for coming. They weren't set up for Q&A in here, but we'll go outside, and if you want to chat with us, we've got a lot of our team here as well, but we look forward to meeting a lot of you and hearing your stories, and thank you very much for coming today.
Thanks, everyone.